As I said yesterday, the new opposition leader Peter Dutton announced his front bench. This is the shadow ministry lineup. Lots of new faces, all new to the ministry, but they're faces you know. People like Andrew Hastie, Sarah Henderson, regulars on this program like James McGrath. There's been a rejig of responsibilities, and I think he's got a team that the Liberal leader would hope are there to fight to get the coalition back in the game come the next election. So joining me now from Brisbane is the opposition leader, Peter Dutton. Welcome to the program, Peter Dutton. Great to have you. Congratulations on your elevation as well. I'm less concerned than perhaps you might have been about the number of women. I want to hope that everyone in your ministry is there on merit. But give me a sense of what motivated you. I know what it's like to have to draw these lists up. It's anguish for a party leader. What motivated you about the people you promoted? What were the abilities you were looking for?
Well, Peter, I think as you would well recall, as Tony Abbott told me, and John Howard and Scott Morrison as well, it's the toughest job as leader of the opposition or as leader of the party to make these calls, to tell people that there's not a position for them on the front bench, good people who have done well. I think there's a different skill set in opposition than what we need in government, and it's different having a ministry, having a department, all of the work coming up in briefs and your staff being provided with that support, to being an opposition where you have a very limited number of staff. For most shadow ministers, probably one staff member, and there's a different skill set that's needed from solving problems when you're a minister to, trying to create problems for the government and looking for ways to support good government policy if that's what's before you as well. So I think the skill set that we've got also allows people from a diverse range of backgrounds to be part of the face of the Liberal Party. It also allows us to bring some younger faces through, the next generation, which is important. I'm conscious, I've been on the front bench since 2004, and I'm conscious that a number of us have taken positions for a long time, and that's meant others haven't been able to come through. And I wanted to give the opportunity to that next generation to shine and to demonstrate their capabilities. And I think people will be very impressed with what they see.
You're blooding a lot of new ones. I said, Andrew Hastie is going into the cabinet or shadow cabinet as Defence Shadow. You've got Claire Chandler, and people will know her for her advocacy about women's sport from Tasmania. She's got an elevation. Are you prepared, if they don't shape up, if they're not working, because opposition's hard, you're right to say that, if they're not working, will you send them out and put new people in?
Look, Peter, I think that goes without saying, and that's been the case for every leader of the party. We reward those people that have done well. There are a number of people that I've given a leg up to because they've done well in their seats. Phil Thompson is one such example, a great local member, and that was always the approach that John Howard took. It was probably how I got my chance to go into the ministry just after my first term in the 2001 Parliament. And I think it sends a message to the rest of the party room as well that I want you to perform well in your seats and in your local communities. And if you're demonstrating a capacity to work hard there, a connection to your local community, then there's the prospect of promotion as well. But as I say, the difficulty is, there are so many good people that have missed out because we've got a limited number of places, obviously proportionately from our numbers out of the election to that of the National Party under the coalition agreement. The formula there means that we lose a couple of positions. The Nats pick those up, and that's just the way the arithmetic works. But yeah, that's what my colleagues would expect. They need to perform, and that is certainly the expectation that I have of them.
40% of your party room comes from Queensland, and that's because Queensland did well in the election where it was basically a rout in other jurisdictions. We know the Liberal Party at a state level struggling in WA, was basically wiped out in WA. It's struggling in South Australia. It's struggling in Victoria as well. Alexander Downer was the first leader not to come from Sydney. That was 30 years ago. I reckon you're the first Liberal leader, aren't you, to come from Queensland. How do you reboot the party? How do you build back that volunteer base? Because you and I know we're not telling tales out of school. People were cranky at Scott Morrison on polling day. How do you get people back supporting the Liberal Party?
Well, Peter, I've got to build on the great work of my predecessors, including Scott Morrison, and there was a clear message to us at the election. We can't pretend that wasn't there or that we didn't hear it, and we've got a lot of rebuilding to do, and we have a lot of connection to re-establish. There's a work that we've already started on significant policy positions that we will take, and I think that is the way to good politics. Good policy results in good politics, and that's the way I was brought up under John Howard and Peter Costello, and I believe it very strongly. And if we have a policy difference that our people can believe in, that they can fight for, that they can argue with at the pub or with their friends at a barbecue, then we will get people rejoining the party. And already we've seen that across the country as well. And I want to provide that steady hand, the leadership. I've obviously, having been on the front bench and been in ministries, I've come from Queensland, but I'm in and out of the states, every week, and I have a great affinity with, the whole of the country, and I wanted to continue to build on that, and we'll bring forward policies that are strong policies that will upset the Labor Party, but my job is to support policy where the government's putting forward something that's in our national interest, but to call them out where they're making bad policies. And on energy at the moment, they are leading us down into a cul-de-sac, and Chris Bowen, Anthony Albanese, Jim Chalmers, they are out of their depth at the moment, and they've got the levers there to deal with these problems as we did when we were in government. But honestly, they have no idea which way to turn at the moment, and it's going to result in higher electricity prices for families and small businesses, and an unreliability that'll see businesses question whether they keep their manufacturing operations here in Australia.
I don't think anyone doubts you've got the right instincts to lead the party, particularly at a difficult time in opposition. And it's one thing to have good policy that you develop internally, you put it out there to market, you take it to the next election. But when you're the opposition leader, you lead a team that also are confronted with whatever the government of the day determines they're putting through the parliament or announcing as their way forward. So you're both reactive and proactive. One of those issues, I have to say, is the culture wars from the ALP. I mean, I would often implore the coalition when you're in government to actually have a fight on education, to stand up on some of these issues about climate a little more readily than I think you did towards the end of your term. I think one of those big issues you've got is the voice. I'm violently opposed to the voice, not because I don't want a fair go and better educational and job attainment for Aboriginal Australians, but I don't think you unite the country by putting in the Constitution a division based on race. I think it's wrong in principle. So why are the Liberals seemingly sitting on the fence on this issue?
Well, Peter, as you know, in the past, we've taken a decision, even sitting around the table at leadership meetings with you in Tony's days in opposition and in government. I mean, we took pragmatic decisions in relation to climate and in relation to other issues because we wanted to concentrate on the perceived strengths, rightly the perceived strengths of the coalition, that is around national security and the economy. I think what we've got to do is to continue to prosecute those strengths, and there will be a stark difference between what we offer at the next election in keeping our country safe, in dealing with the reality of China in the national security space, and also in relation to energy policy and the economy more generally, because cost of living is going up. It is going to be tougher under Labor, and they will be significant debates for us. But I think we need to wade more into the debates that do mean a lot to people living right across the country, but in particular in areas where people are struggling to fill their car at the moment because petrol's over $2 a litre. People are struggling already to pay their electricity costs, and they're going to be higher under Labor.
But you can do both,
and
Peter
the list
Dutton.
goes on. And
you can do both.
Yeah.
You can still deal with all of those issues, but on a matter of principle.
This is exactly my point. So I want to come to what you've raised, which is a very important point. But my argument is that we can deal with those issues. So on education, I've taken a decision to put Alan Tudge into the education portfolio because, frankly, he's the best person to do that job. And he has an incredible mind. He's got a capability that isn't matched by many people in the federal parliament when it comes to the education agenda. And he will be carving out a different space for us, and he will be talking about the the differences that the Labor approach to curriculum and to the way in which our kids are taught from early childhood through until they exit university. And that is an important debate for us to engage in. Now, on The Voice, the government doesn't know yet what they're proposing. And all I've said is that I want to hear from the government about what it is they're suggesting. It's over the next couple of years. I don't think the public has a clue of what the government is talking about at the moment. Everybody gives a tick, as you rightly say, to reconciliation and to providing support to people in Indigenous communities and seeing better outcomes. I mean, that's a given. But the government hasn't properly explained to the public what it is they're proposing, what the law would provide. We haven't seen a draft bill. We haven't seen anything yet. So my approach has been, well, I think it's reasonable for us to see what the government's proposing, and then we'll make a decision at that point.
But you're surely not going to sit there till 2024.
Let the government explain. But Peter, let the government explain to the Australian public what it is they're proposing, because we don't know yet. I mean, there's a headline to it.
Well, they've adopted the statement to the heart. They've adopted the statement to the heart.
But I think there are all sorts of questions that hang off this. I haven't seen legal opinions about the constitutional implications. I haven't seen legal opinions about whether this applies across all areas of public policy or only to those that directly affect Indigenous communities in remote areas. Does it apply to any law regarding education, law and order, health, etc.? Does it require additional funding? How will these people be selected? All of those are questions for the government to answer, and that's the approach that the opposition will be taking.
I understand all of that, but you have a threshold. You have a threshold question. Does the Liberal Party believe that we enshrine in the Constitution a body that separates Australians based on race? That's a threshold question. I have to say, as a Liberal, I don't need a piece of paper or any briefing from the government to tell me that fundamentally that's an anathema. Surely your party room will come to that view before you see that material from the government.
Well, Peter, I mean, we're sort of 2 weeks into opposition. We haven't yet had a shadow cabinet meeting. I announced my shadow cabinet yesterday. We haven't had a party room. So, as you know, the process here is to allow that discussion to take place, and then we'll form a policy position. But I've outlined to you what we need to know so that we can consider what it is they're proposing. Is it a watered down version? Is it something that's going to have a symbolic effect but no practical effect? Is it something that they end up deciding not to do, because the Greens, as you know, don't support this, and the Labor Party is in government with the Greens in the Senate. They need the support of the Greens there to pass their legislation. So I think there's a lot to go on this issue. But as I say, the public, as you know, if I speak from my own position, I think is instinctively in support of things that are practically going to provide support to those kids and women who are suffering sexual assault or domestic violence in a community tonight. That doesn't need to wait 12 months or 18 months or 2 years. They are practical things that the government can address now, and we'll provide our support to those. But I think you do need to walk and chew gum, as you pointed out before. And at the moment, the government's concentrating in one area, and I think there are early wins on the board here that people would support. And I don't want to see those little girls in communities, Peter, suffering sexual assault.
But they're two very distinct issues.
Very high. Of course they are. But the point is that they should be both spoken about in the same conversation, and not to the exclusion of the other, because the issues that we're dealing with are too important.
And I don't think anyone can say that Sky News, unlike a lot of media outlets, gets into those horrific issues of abuse in Aboriginal communities, because we think it needs an airing. But this will run out over a long time, I know, Peter Dutton, but I think it's a big issue of principle. OK, I've got to leave it there. Thank you for your time.